piece of hardware cost for chicken wire just to hold the stuff up?
Once I get a ladder, we fix the leak. So we go up there and we got to put a tarp down, tear everything off. I'll spackle it back in again, and it'll look good as new. It's just, you know, like I did the basement wall down there, that looks good. And I just never got to, because I got to get a big ladder and climb up and stand up there and get a.
Charlie has the ladders.
So yeah, we'll just.
Between Charlie and Wood, they have the ladders.
Anybody that wants to help on that, yeah, that won't take very long to do that. The worst part is putting on your raincoat and your rain hat and chipping all that crap off of there until it breaks down. And then
a lot of them just break down by themselves.
Well, you want to go back and get the stuff that's loose too.
Yeah.
And then we'll just cut a piece of drywall and staple it up there and mud over it. And I've got the spackle stuff, you know, the spray stuff you put on it. So it'll look all right.
Here I am talking again.
Well, I do that sometimes.
I didn't know if we had anybody here or not today because of the fair. Looks like we're doing pretty good, which is actually may not be too good. First of all, welcome to First Universalist Church of New Madison. Glad to have you here. If anybody's watching out there, glad to have you there too. The reason I bring that up, my wife, there's a conservative, well, there's more than one. There's conservative people at New Carlisle where she is interim preaching. Last Sunday for their service, their regular person who works in the audio booth where they do the sound and take the movies and stuff, came in with a mask on, which everybody's wearing masks whenever they want to because of the danger level of infection going on in Montgomery County and Greene County. Sat next to the other 90, I think she was an 87-year-old lady that helps out there. 2 days later, she turned out positive for COVID, and he admitted that he was tested positive before he came to church.
Oh, no.
So, and that is that conservative mentality that says, I don't care, it's not true, it's not real. She's positive. The lady, then they had a church board meeting Tuesday, which my wife was at, and she was at church, so she is paranoid because she is immunocompromised with the medication she takes. So the other two ladies have tested negative so far, but they've got colds, headaches, sore throats, which could be a symptom of COVID or it could be a symptom of just a summer cold. Yeah. But it's scary when you know one person, well, two people actually in the church are already tested positive. So I went up and got a bunch of rapid tests. She tested this morning before she went to church, and she was negative this morning, so she went ahead and went to church. Everybody there is going to wear a mask. Everybody's wiping down all the microphones and everything they're touching and keeping their distance. So this stuff is still out there, and when I come out, I'm going to wear a mask because I've been around her, and if she's exposed, then technically I've been exposed too. So here it is. What was that?
Dick and Crystal.
Yeah.
Both came home with COVID from their big trip up north.
Oh, jeez. Dick and Crystal came home positive for COVID. Luckily, if you've had your shots and your boosters, for most people, it's not too severe. It's more like having a light flu or maybe even a heavy flu.
You're more or less a carrier.
Yeah, but you're spreading it to other people, and if you're older or have diabetes, any of the comorbidities that cause problems for people on a general basis, it can be deadly, and there are people still dying in Montgomery County. Excuse me. The death rate is going down a little bit because I think the infection rate's going down, but it's still pretty rapid.
And take the Paxlovid. If you're over 50 or immunocompromised, the Paxlovid is a miracle drug.
Yes, and you need to contact your doctor if you start having symptoms. Take the test.
5 days.
And I'm not sure, some of the tests have false negatives, some of them have false positives, so you have to contact your personal physician to see what they want you to do. Tara, actually, I don't know if she's called her physician and told him she was exposed, that she was debating doing that, but I think we have to wait and see what happened. So anyway, that's the excitement going on there. Last week, if you came, there wasn't anybody here. There was a sign on the front of the door. We all went to El Dorado. Really nice service. Dr. Cecil Bohannon from Muncie, Ball State professor, talked on the Muslim-Christian relationship. He'd spent some time in Afghanistan, Egypt, other places. really interesting speaker, dynamic speaker, told a nice story of the family inheriting a gold ring. And sometime I'll probably go through that again because I also liked his story that he went through. So I was going to do that this Sunday, but I basically had kind of an epiphany. And epiphany is, if anybody doesn't know, is a sudden revelation of something. And the interesting thing about epiphanies is it's something that's been right in front of your face for minutes, hours, days, months, or years that you never realized, and all of a sudden it kind of dawns on you that this is the reality of what's going on. It can be a religious thing, and that's why in Christianity the Epiphany is basically referred to as the Magi coming to visit the birth of Christ in Bethlehem, because Christ is being revealed to the Gentiles. That's the Epiphany. That's the surprise, the revelation, the inspiration that people would take from it. So anyway, we raised $153 for the Refugee Alliance of Delaware County. That was with El Dorado's congregation, our congregation together. Last week was supposed to be Derek's week here. I actually emailed him and asked him if it would be all right if we canceled his coming here and we went over there to see that, because I didn't think it was practical to ask Dr. Bohannon to come to see us separately when we could both do it together, and he agreed. So we went ahead and gave Eric his stipend anyway, because that's not his fault that he wasn't here today, or wasn't here last Sunday. So hopefully he'll be all right with that, and he'll be back again next month. All right, do we have any announcements? I guess fair all week. I'll be in the Democratic tent pretty much every day from 2 to 4. That's the only time I can spring loose, so stop by and say hi. Pick up your I Vote Democrat badge. And help us fight off the Republican kids. Our prelude, Count Your Blessings by Irving Berlin. It still applies. In sightless night, terrors draw near, nameless fears of talon and tooth. Hopeless yawns before us an abyss, alone and unknown in the gloom, longing for the dawn. O sacred flame, blaze forth, wisdom brought to life, guide us with the light of hope, the warmth of love, the beacon of purpose and meaning, because we are all afraid of the dark. Let there be light. Opening hymn is 136. When gentle tides go rolling by. time making sense out of it. The imagery is unbelievable. We have come to plow the tides, the oat lies on the ground. I hear their fires in the field, they drive the stallion down. The roses bloom, both light and dark, the winds do seldom call. The running sands recall the time when love embraces all. It feels supportive, like a succoring image that you want to look at and just sit back in your chair and drink your lemonade. And then you start to think about what exactly does that mean? And it's like, you have to talk about that. So I may put a mark on that and do a little research because I find that very interesting. Okay, our affirmation is 479. An awe so quiet, I don't know when it began. A gratitude has begun to sing in me. Was there some moment dividing song from no song? When does dew fall begin? When does night fold its arms over our hearts to cherish them? When is daybreak? Let's take a moment to ponder that. An awe so quiet, I don't know when it began. A gratitude has begun to sing in me. Was there some moment dividing song from no song? When does dewfall begin? When does night fold its arms over our hearts to cherish them? When is daybreak? It's by Denise Leverton. Okay, our children's story, and I want you to keep thinking about epiphanies. Think about epiphanies in your life. If you want to bring those up as examples, because a lot of what I have is examples of epiphanies. This one in the children's story is close. I wouldn't exactly call it an epiphany, but it was the closest I could find.
Welcome to Storybearers Radio. You can read along with any of our stories, all for free at our website, storybearers.com. Plug Hole by Jade Metal. Charlie loved baths. Doesn't everyone love baths? He could make towers of bubbles, beards of foam, and splash like the Kraken. He liked the water hot, the soap slippery, and the mirrors steamy. He liked to stay in there for hours until the water went cold. Well, that's not entirely true. He didn't like it when the water went cold. But he generally stayed in the bath until the water got cold because there was only one thing in the world worse than staying in a cold bath. It was that moment when Mum would lean over the edge of the bath and say, "Come on, Charlie, help me pull out the plug." "Come on, Charlie." And Charlie would feel it, that dread, frightened feeling in the base of his squeaky clean tummy. That moment when the plug would lift, and as Mum raised it from the water, the bath would gurgle in anticipation. That moment when the soapy water would swish and swirl, churn and chortle, draining down, 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 until it made that dreadful sound. It was terrible. It was terrifying. It was nothing short of ghastly. It was the sound of a kid slurping snot down their throat, a soul being sucked from a shoe. A brick dragged on a chalkboard, rattled along a row of fingernails, and hurtled into some dark, bottomless tornado. Every time it happened, Charlie was stricken. He would skip to the end of the bath and whimper for Mum to pick him up. He did not want to be anywhere near the plug hole. He wanted to be clean out of the bath, in the air and away, in her safe, warm towel. Every time. And every time, Mummy would laugh and say, "It's just the plug hole, Charlie. You can't fall in." But that's where Mummy was dead wrong. One fateful day, as Mummy laughingly fished beneath the sudsy water for the plug, saying, "Come on, Charlie, help me pull out the plug." Charlie was horrified to see his worst fears realized. As she leaned with her hand into the water and began to lift the black, lifeless plug from the plug hole, there was an almighty groaning, gurgling sound. The sink slipped. Before anybody knew what was happening, Mummy was sucked down, down, right into the plug hole. "Mummy!" cried Charlie, and there was nothing for it. He couldn't let her go down there alone. He had to follow her into the plug hole. Charlie swished and thrashed as he tumbled in. Down, down he fell into the grim, ghastly underbath. Pipes loomed up, the dark closed in. Charlie heard the strangest sounds, creaking and clatters, grumbles and whines. The water swooshed around him like a fiendish wave. He smelled shampoo and the dirty tides of muddy kids. "Mom!" he called. Way down in the distance, he thought he saw a flash of his mother's hair, but it was too fast and fleeting. She was too far ahead. Before he knew it, lickety-split, he met a bend in the pipe. Whoosh! He slipped helter-skelter, flim-flam, clap-trap, pell-mell, down the metal pipes. The water surged, rumble-tumble, clinkety-clank, higgledy-piggledy, flap-doodle, hurly-burly, topsy-turvy, down, 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 cascading through the pipes with him. Suddenly he tumbled headlong into an S-curve. There was a surge of suds, a whiff of downpipe, a skid and a slip, a spill and a dip. Charlie nosedived into a plummet and plunged 100 meters in 2 seconds flat. "Whee!" he cried. It was really quite fun. Almost exactly like a water slide, only cozier and with warm, nice-smelling water. There was a flash of brightness and Charlie was shot into the air and into the light of day. He landed with a splash into the sea, and there, bobbing beside him with the biggest smile on her face, was Mum. And there was a pod of dolphins nearby, and a rainbow to boot. "Where are we?" said Charlie in wonder. "We've just landed in the sea," laughed Mum. "All plug holes lead to the sea." And they played with the friendly dolphins till it was bedtime. No bath needed.
All plug holes lead to the sea. All right. Joys and concerns. We got a bunch this week. Yes, Margaret.
I've got 2 separate items. The first is a concern. Patrick's best friend lives in Montreal, Canada, and Pat got an email from him yesterday that he's contemplating suicide. He was put in the hospital for a couple days. The message was not like the problem has been found or whatever. We can't reach him. So I don't know what he's going through right now, but really send some positive vibes up there for him. His name is Gordon.
What's the name?
Gordon?
Gordon. Do you know what hospital?
No, we don't know anything, just this vague email message that came.
You can call is he in Montreal?
Yeah,
You can call the Montreal Police Department and say you received a message talking about suicide. And they are very good, particularly the Canadians are very good about following up on threats like that. And if they have a record of it, I don't know how much they would tell you because of privacy,
yeah,
but they might, if you say you're a friend and you're concerned and he reached out to you, they might be able to give you some information. It's at least worth a try.
for sure. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so our thoughts and see, let's say, I'm not going to do thoughts and prayers anymore. Our hearts and minds are with Gordon. Hopefully he reached out to other people besides you and someone has him in the hospital. And if you have been paying attention, there's a new 911 number, not 911, I think it's 988. There's a new number, suicide hotline, that you can dial now instead of having to dial the whole 7-digit one or 9-digit one. You can dial a speed dial, and there's always somebody there to answer. Got another one?
Yeah, this is a joy concern combination. My job has been getting very difficult for me physically. And a couple of Mondays ago or something, Patrick and I had a meeting with our financial advisor and a long talk about everything. And one thing led to another, that I've turned in my resignation for my job, and maybe my last day will be around September 16th. I hope it's sooner because it's really taken a toll on me. I don't know if I can last that long. But after that, I'm retired. So I'm really anxious about it. I've always been very defined in my mind by my work. And I don't know what this is going to bring. So we'll see.
Well, we've seen you have a lot of talent, and your work can be your talent after you retire. And I think you could actually make some money out of that. So I would keep all your options open, I guess is what I would say. I don't know enough about your situation, but I think you have lots of possibilities coming up. And I'm sure many people who have retired can tell you that they're busier after they retired and a lot happier with their busyness because there's not somebody else breathing down their neck telling them what they have to do and can't do and can do and must do. I will personally attest to that I'm much happier after having retired.
I think it's the transition I'm afraid of.
Transitions are hard. It's like a plug hole.
Change.
It's a
big
plug hole,
change.
but you may end up in the ocean and with the dolphins, so it could be a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, two pretty momentous things from there. Anyone else? We don't want to forget Sierra. If you're familiar with the police officer in Richmond that was shot, she is still struggling. I mean, she's still alive, which is a positive thing, and I think there are some positive signs. I've not really heard much information come out of that. But it tells you how much times are changing. Sierra is a couple with another woman and a loyal member of the Richmond Police Department and accepted as a loyal member of the police department. So even though sometimes it appears that we're not making any progress, we are making a little progress. And we're still backsliding because Indiana has the same open carry law that allows a mentally ill person to have a handgun and pull it out and shoot somebody for no reason, stop for a traffic stop. And then Sierra was the K-9 officer. When her dog approached the car to see if there were any drugs there, which there obviously were, the guy went into panic mode and pulled out his gun and shot her in the head. I can't say anything about that. Okay, and we want to keep New Carlisle, as I mentioned before, with the people who have COVID, and hopefully the people who do not get COVID from that.
Jim, let's remember Ukraine once again. I think it's so pertinent at this time with sunflowers blooming all over our county and certainly beyond, that let's look at those in honor and also in solidarity with those people in the Ukraine.
And things just get worse in Ukraine. The Russians are occupying the largest nuclear plant in Europe, and people are shelling it, and I'm sure it's not the Ukrainians shelling their own plant, and I'm not sure why the Russians would be doing it, but they do things that are strange anyway. It's like when they said the Ukrainians shelled the prisoner facility and killed 70 or 80 prisoners. I'm pretty sure the Ukrainians didn't kill their own prisoners. That doesn't sound like something even by accident they would do. So we could have a catastrophe of monumental proportions come out of that, and we don't seem to be making any progress anywhere with that. So, all right, is there anything I've missed? Ukraine, Richmond, Sierra. I think that's it. We had a good time in El Dorado. last week. We were raising money for the Afghan refugees, and Lou is working on our outreach for the Ukrainian refugees. I got a couple of emails from him. He's made contact with a couple of their representatives, and I think we're exploring what our possibilities are. We talked about at the board meeting that we as a community want to do something to help. We have not really defined what that is, whether it's putting together bags or whether it's just supplying money, or whether it's helping furnish apartments or even furnishing apartments. I told them that I have places that could be available, and we'll kind of see how that turns out. So, all right, for those joys and concerns which we haven't mentioned, but which are prominent in our minds, let's light another candle. If you have any needs, any concerns, any worries, Derek is always available for us if you need someone to talk to. I'm sure I could impose on my wife if someone needs someone to talk to at a 6-foot distance, obviously. So stay healthy, please. All right, our message is Epiphany. Epiphany has got a lot of definitions. Once I started looking at it, it got more and more complicated. My idea of Epiphany is like walking into the bedroom and forgetting what I was there for, and then suddenly it occurs to me I came in to get like a pencil or a pen or cat food or something strange. That to me is a minor epiphany. Some people make epiphanies out to be like the Magi visiting Christ at Bethlehem at the birth. It's a monumental thing. It's earth-shaking that changes your life completely. So I'm open to both. Epiphany can be a tremendous life-changing experience, or it can be just something that happens to you as a flash of inspiration. My favorite example comes from the movie Jumanji. Has everybody seen the original Jumanji with Robin Williams? If you haven't, you're in for a treat. Let me set the scene for you. Jumanji, they were playing a game, and it takes them back to Africa, and many adventures ensue, one of which they're in the attic, and all of a sudden the attic floor turns into quicksand, and then they're attacked by giant spiders. So Robin Williams tells this little boy who is with there, the little boy and little girl who are with them, to go out in the garden shed and get an axe to fight the spiders.
Here! My dad kept an axe in the woodshed. Go get it! Hurry! Go, go, go!
He's got the axe.
That is an epiphany. He picked up the axe to try to break into the garden shed to get the axe.
Yeah.
And he's holding the axe. That to me is the epitome of an epiphany. Peter is the little boy. If you haven't seen the movie, one of the things that happens in Jumanji is they're all mind-bending things. I can't even explain it to you. I just would encourage you to see the movie. But anyway, he tries to cheat the game, and the game gets back at him by turning him into a monkey, or turning his appearance into a monkey. All right. Now, to get back to the history of epiphanies, we'll go back to the Bible, the story of the birth of Christ and the gift of the Magi. That's traditionally and has long been called the Epiphany, but it's also been called Three Kings Day. It's called the Theophany, and that basically means the revelation of the time that Christ or God was revealed to be Christ himself, or God was revealed to humanity, to the Gentiles at that time, to be Christ himself incarnated, or God himself incarnated as Christ. That's the Trinity. We may go into that sometime if somebody's curious about it. I've not done a lot of research on that. It's a basic Christian belief that the Spirit, that God and Christ are all one, and yet they're separate. And everybody has parsed that in multiple directions. So the important point is the revelation of the surprise of the appearance of Christ being revealed to the Gentiles. Being that learned men have studied the Bible for generations after generations after generations, there are multiple interpretations, and you can really get into the weeds trying to study them, and that we are not going to do that today. But many times it comes as a flash of conversion at a youth camp, or revival, or a moment of the sun rising over a mountaintop. That's when somebody has an experience. They call it coming to Christ. They call it being born again. That also is referred to as an epiphany. It is an earth-shaking, life-changing, something that your life never goes back to the same if you have that experience. They can be not as popular, not as good as that, because you can have epiphanies, and some people argue there's no such thing as a bad epiphany. But sometimes if you're living a life experience which is not very happy and you suddenly realize there is a way out, or you made a mistake and done something wrong, that may be an epiphany for a good moment, but it also may be through a time of darkness and unhappiness. So, it can be a momentous, earth-shaking, life-changing occasion, or it can be an everyday experience. I follow the older aged, and actually as I get older and more aged, the more epiphanies I seem to have, as I mentioned. That's when you go and you find yourself in a room or someplace and you don't know why you went in there, forget what you were looking for, and then all of a sudden it occurs to you in a kind of a flash, oh yeah, that's why I was here. Or many times it's when you go back to the kitchen and then you have that little flash that says, yeah, I didn't come back here with whatever I went into the bedroom to get. So, another example is, these are the fun ones for me. Anybody know what this is? Can you see the picture? It's a little device that makes hard-boiled eggs. You put your eggs in there, and it has an automatic timer. You put a little bit of water in the bottom and turn it on, and like 10 minutes later or 6 minutes later, whatever the timer says, it steams those eggs to perfection. And you can get the fancy ones that'll do soft-boiled and hard-boiled or whatever boiled you want. But ours is just the basic one that just you turn it on, it heats the eggs. And what comes with it is a little container that tells you how much water to pour in it, and on the bottom is a little spike, a little needle. Because if you don't puncture the egg, a lot of times they'll split and blow up when you steam them. We've had ours, not this particular one, but we've had ours for probably 10 years and use it. We eat a lot of eggs. When we had chickens, we ate eggs all the time. And even now, we still eat a lot of eggs. And I try to buy them from the people that have their own chickens. There was a place on 36 for years that I was getting it from. I don't know what happened to her. She kind of went out of business. But anyway, we always got good, nice brown eggs from her. But anyway, you have to puncture the eggs, or the albumin, the whites of the eggs, will boil out, and the egg will sometimes crack, and it looks really disgusting, and it's not very appetizing to eat. So we've been doing this for 10 years. Last week, this is another reason I started talking about epiphanies. My wife said, you know, when you pick up the egg to puncture it, you pick it up and you do like this and you puncture it, you're puncturing the bottom of the egg. And that's where the albumin is. What about if you puncture the top of the egg, where if there was any air pockets, it would be in the top of the egg? So I said, hey, I'll try that. So the last 3 batches we've made, I have not had one cracked egg or had one little spume of white gooey stuff popping out of the top. All this time I've been picking the egg up and punching it in the bottom in the exact, and there's no instructions that says how to puncture an egg for an egg cooker. So that was a tremendous epiphany, a life-shaping, earth-changing epiphany. Now every one of our hard-boiled eggs is really delectable and delicious to eat. You don't have to peel through all that gooey stuff to get to it. So that's just one example. Another example is, how many people know O. Henry's The Gift of the Magi? That is a fantastic story. It took place in 1905. So the story is dated, but the ideas behind it are undated completely. A young couple, very much in love, no children yet. He works as a clerk in some downtown office, and this is in 1905, where everybody wore a hat, everybody wore a suit with a vest and an overcoat. And she was a housewife, which in 1905, a clerk could make enough money to support a family without the wife working, but not a lot of money, and you couldn't have a fancy wife. So he had inherited, this was Christmas time was coming up, that's the gift of the Magi. Christmas time was coming up, they each wanted to buy the other something special for Christmas, for a Christmas present. Each of them looked at what the other's prized possession was. The young man had inherited a gold watch from his father when his father died, but it was just the watch. If you remember the pictures of your 1900s, 1920s, there was always a chain on the watch and a fob that went in the watch went in one vest pocket, the chain went through your vest buttonhole and the fob went in the other one. That's so you didn't lose your watch. He did not have the chain and could not afford to buy a chain. So he just kept his watch in his pocket, and she was afraid he was going to lose it. She, on the other hand, being in 1905, had a beautiful head of brown chestnut hair down to her waist. In those days, women were extremely proud of their hair, and haircuts were unknown. The bob didn't come in until the 20s, and the flapper girls. Before that time, you either piled it up on your head or you wore it in coils or lots of fanciful decoration for hair in those days. So that was her prized possession, was her hair. His prized possession was his watch. So what did he buy for her? He went to the pawn shop, pawned his watch, and bought an ivory hair comb. If you remember some of these old pictures, there's a comb that has 4 or 5 fingers on it and then a little protrusion at the top. And they had decorations. They would be made out of ivory from Africa or from China. Very expensive and very, very desirable, and made a woman's beautiful, lustrous hair look amazingly fantastic. She went to the pawn shop, or not the pawn shop, she went to the beauty shop. And what did she sell so she could buy her husband a watch chain?
Sold her hair.
She sold her hair. So Christmas morning, they each open their presents, a watch chain for a watch he does not have, and a hair comb for hair she does not have. But their love for each other was displayed. You know, Henry has written many of these stories, and they all have a little epiphany, they all have a little twist to it. One of them, if you remember O. Henry, was the little boy that was kidnapped by the 2 desperados in a Midwestern town. And the little boy turned out to be such a pill that the desperados ended up trying to have the parents pay him, they were going to pay the parents to take the kid back. It's kind of hard to imagine that, but he could write the story to make it that believable. That they grabbed the little kid off the street and they're going to hold him prisoner. And then, and this is the days before you have child abuse and everything that we're talking about. We're talking in the 1900s, when it was like Tom Swift days, when everybody, or at least the stories that you hear, when everybody were decent people, and even the criminals were decent people at heart. So these 2 poor criminals were so harassed by this little boy that they finally took him back to his parents and gave him a couple bucks to take their kid back again. O. Henry is famous for those kind of stories. Okay, so that is an epiphany. Where are we here? O. Henry, get to the Magi. Okay, the one lady I talked to, but read her story was an Elsie, and I'm not going to give you her last name, but she has a book on epiphanies, and her epiphany occurred to her as a deep calling. She is a very Christian person, and her viewpoint, her background, everything she talks about is from a Christian perspective. So to her, it was like a born-again experience. But curiously, and I'm not sure she is aware, and this may be another epiphany for her, her epiphany was she had been married to a man for 10 years and was not happy. And she was preparing something for a church play or a church program of some kind, and it came across a thing about children and what the value of children, the purpose of children, the enjoyment of children. And she had an epiphany that they had been trying for 10 years and had never had a child and could not have a child, and then she finally decided she didn't love this guy, so she moved out and got her own apartment. So for a Christian person, talking about divorce was kind of interesting, but she went through and made an entire study of epiphanies in other people and came up with some pretty interesting ideas. People who knew what they were doing, they thought, knew what they understood, they thought they understood what they knew, and then there's a flash of inspiration, and who knows what the cause is. Sometimes it's just something that occurs to you that causes that epiphany. She went through a real complicated explanation of how epiphanies and all the requirements and invested into it more time than I want to spend to it. So let me get to the point I really wanted to talk about was my real epiphany, the one that is changing, not changing my life, but opening my life up I told you about the people I work with. One of them was talking to me this week and complaining because once again he was short of money and asked to borrow money from me, which I always loan them money. I don't charge any interest, and they can pay it back out of their wages, or they can pay it back when they get money from some other place. So we talk about his finances all the time. I keep trying to give him advice, gently, but advice on how to advance yourself, how to make progress in your financial health. One of the things I advised him is, if you don't have any money, don't go on vacation. Every year they spend $1,000 or $2,000 on vacation, which is money they don't have. He has multiple credit cards, and he pays them on the monthly fee that's due. I say, get a credit card. When you go to the store, whatever you're going to buy, charge it on the credit card. Take your cash that you were going to pay for it with, put it in an envelope. At the end of the month, all your gas, all your groceries, $200, $300, take that cash out of the envelope, pay off your credit card. You'll get 1%, 2%, 3% back from the credit card company, and your credit rating will go up, and you can actually borrow more money as long as you pay it back. I can't do that. If I have the credit card, I'll spend it, and then I'll do that. And I said, so what is the understanding of these people? That you can't control your spending impulses? So then we got in, as we were discussing this, he finally said he was mad, and he's a Trump voter, he's a conservative, he's a nice guy, we've discussed how you get back and forth between those two. He's mad at people who take money from the government. He's mad at welfare people. He's mad at people who are Medicaid. He's mad at people who use food stamps because they are taking his money, because he works and he pays taxes, and they're taking his money. I pointed out to him that his kids are on Medicaid, so he's taking Medicaid. I pointed out to him that he's not the best money manager, and as we talked about this, he said he was mad at himself, just like he was mad at these other people. And he was kind of mad at me for loaning him money. And he says, you're a Democrat, and that's what all Democrats do. They take care of people that shouldn't be taken care of. And I'm thinking, I'm taking care of you. This is the question I have, and I have not had my epiphany, and I don't have my answer. How do you reach these people? I go in and volunteer at the Democratic booth in Greenville at the fair. It's right there by the Coliseum. Stop by if you're there and say hi, pick up a free badge or something. We get these people that come in all the time that want to argue about how terrible Democrats are and how they're giving money away and all the terrible things that they do. And they want to argue. They're mad. These are angry people. And they want somebody to argue with. They want somebody to fight with. And you can't argue with them. You can't fight with them. You try to humor them. You try to tell jokes with them. I had two high school kids come in who can't even hardly even hold up to vote. I tried to give them a registration thing because high school kids can actually work as poll workers. If you're 17 in Dark County, you can work as a poll worker. And they were picking up literature and saying, this is all Democratic stuff. And I said, this is a Democratic tent. And they said, we're Republicans. And I said, well, go to the Republican tent. And they said, where's that? And I'm sorry, in a moment of weakness, I said they're down by the porta potties. So, and I didn't actually say porta potties, I used a little more graphic term. But these are basically, they're Dark County people, they're nice people, they would give you the shirt off your back if they know you personally. Remember I told you the story about the guy who was telling racist jokes to the black girl he was working with because she was like his friend, and he couldn't put two and two together that she was black. And so he's telling jokes about black people. I mean, what kind of idiocy are we dealing with here? It's the same thing that's going on, and I talk about this every week, and I apologize. The legislature in Ohio passed a law that anybody can carry a gun no matter what. And technically, if you're a spousal abuser or have a felony record, you're not supposed to carry a gun. But the police can't come up and ask you if you have a felony record. They can't come up and ask to see your license for your gun because they don't need a license anymore. So, I'm kind of running out of time, and I don't really know where I was going with this, because I still have the questions. I like the idea of Epiphany. I enjoy the positive epiphanies, like the eggs not splattering all over my refrigerator anymore. But I would really like for someone to help me find the answer to reach these people who are good-hearted people, who are decent people, who can't see reality for what it is. What is it that makes them so against science, makes them so against logic, so against, we had people come in and argue that the invasion of the Congress was a peaceful protest. And it's like, what can you say? I mean, there's video on TV all over the place. Everything that they don't agree with is fake. We are approaching a period of danger, I think. The secretaries of state in 4 or 5 states, Georgia, Michigan, Arizona, Pennsylvania, are people who say the whole last election was rigged. And they have said, if we win the election, everything was fair. If we lose, it was all faked and we're going to change it. They're telling me that right now before the election. What is going to happen to this country if these people end up in power? It's truly, truly worrisome for me. All right, I'm sorry I kind of wandered all over the place on this, but this is something that impacts all of us. It's something that has an effect on our lives and will have a coming effect on our lives, and it's something that we have to find some answer to. And I don't know what that answer is as of yet. So,
Tim,
yes.
just if I could quickly add.
Yes, please.
If you think of Epiphany also, in a different way, that fuels many scientific breakthroughs. And then that leads one to think, why was it a breakthrough? Because we have a tendency to look at something and anticipate the results. And often it's our own bias, even with science, that why didn't that happen? An example, discovery of penicillin. In a bacterial plate full of bacterial colonies, some have clear halos in the middle of it because there was an errant mold that got in there that led to the discovery of penicillin. In terms of human behavior, you probably already know this, but one of the most powerful forms of learning in teaching and learning is when you present students, no matter what level they are, with a discrepant event. So conceptually, they know things to, let's say, the C level, or the K level, or the Z level. You want to take them beyond that. You present them with something that is totally discrepant from what they've ever seen before. As you talk through that, you extend the concept, and the learning is very deep and much more meaningful. That results from a discrepant and an aha moment. And then the last one I would just share with you is there are volumes written on a concept, or really a principle, known as cognitive dissonance. It's cognitive dissonance that prevents people from seeing reality in the way it is when they think it's somewhere else and overlook totally what they should be seeing. And it's a psychological principle. It's in other areas of science, neurosciences. Might want to read up on that because cognitive dissonance can explain so much in terms of what should be or what actually is in terms of human behavior.
There's some of the research I've been doing leads to cult behavior, because if you look at the behavior of people who have been involved in cults, they basically lose all ability to do independent thinking, but they give that up voluntarily because their need to belong is so strong. And this is primarily done in religions, but we're beginning to see it now in politics. Their need to belong is so strong, they will say anything or do anything. And this includes, you remember the 30 or 40 or however many people there were out in California when the asteroid or the comet was coming by? They thought they were going to be taken up and have an afterlife on the comet, so all 30 of them committed suicide in their beds, drank poison. Or the Jim Jones thing in Guyana, where hundreds of people drank poison Kool-Aid on the orders of Jim Jones when they were about to be investigated by the authorities. This same mentality is we're seeing at work right now, where people deny the reality of what's going on in front of them. When there are 50 lawsuits that all failed that said there was a problem with the elections, when Republican legislators and Republican election workers scrutinize the ballots 7, 8, 9 times. They pay thousands of dollars and come up with all kinds of harebrained excuses about ballots being brought in from China and having bamboo on them. all that has been proven wrong and all the ballots have been proven completely correct and efficient, nothing wrong with any of them, they still will not accept those facts. That is some kind of cult behavior. And as I've mentioned before, I don't know if there's some kind of virus because it seems to be spreading worldwide now. Is it some kind of result of increasing tension or increasing worry on people's minds that they can't take the tension? They give up and say, I want to align myself with someone who will take care of me, a father figure, and I will do whatever that person says. Look into people who have grown up in strictly religious families and then have broken free of that and listen to their experiences. Some of those are extremely interesting. Okay. Anyone else have a comment or an epiphany of your own? Yes.
I have a question.
Yes.
Of all these years, I've been mispronouncing Magi.
You can pronounce it any way you want to.
Because
I didn't look it up. I'm not the best at pronunciation. I can still remember burned into my brain is when I was in the 6th grade and was reading something out of a textbook. I talked about democracy because I'd never heard the word democracy before and didn't know how to pronounce it. So I just read along and pronounced it the way it looked. You can pronounce words any way you want. It's fine with me. And if you look in the dictionary, you'll find many times there are preferred, but there are also 2 or 3 acceptable. So however you want to pronounce it, magi, I don't care. Jedi, yes. Okay. Our offering, what are we hearing?
This is called the Dark Town Strutters.
Yes, the Dark Town Strutters Ball. What a fantastic. So strut on up here and drop your buck in. If you need something, take it out. If you need help from somewhere else out in the ether, let us know. That's what we need. And our closing hymn is 132. by Barrow Dunham. And now, since the struggle deepens, since evil abides and good does not yet prosper, let us gather what strength we have, what confidence and valor, that our small victories may end in triumph, and the world awaited be a world attained. As we close, let us remember Gordon and hearts and minds that he will be successful in his challenge with depression. Remember Sierra and her beloved, and that they will be successful in recuperation and back to a normal lifestyle. And one that I forgot to mention, I talked about it at El Dorado last week if you were there. A good friend of mine from Dayton lost her son to a drug overdose, 36 years old, a healthy person who had fought addiction his whole life, and that has really been a blow to her. Someone she doted on as her youngest. That is a terrible thing to experience. So our hearts and minds are with her. All right, and we are going to hear for our postlude, Faraway Places. Okay, a final thought I will leave you with. This picture is the Harry Potter picture of Snape. Everybody, I'm assuming, is familiar with Harry Potter. Snape was a reviled, hated, terrible figure throughout the, I don't know how many episodes there were, 7 or 8 episodes. And it turned out he was the hidden hero of the whole operation. He was the one who was working undercover to destroy Voldemort. And in that sense, one of the most meaningful and moving ideas of Epiphany for me, in the moment when I truly understand my enemy, understand him well enough to defeat him, then in that very moment, I also love him. The idea being, if you understand someone enough to find their weak spot, if you understand their hopes, their desires, their fears, their loves, what they cherish, what they are terrified of, you will find their weak spot and you will be able to destroy them. But in getting to know a person that well, you will also come to love them. All right, that ends our service. First Universalist of New Madison. There's cake back there. There's coffee if it's cold enough for that, and there's lemonade. See you at the fair. Don't eat too much, but go to Kenny's tent and support the local. Is that what group is that? Kiwanis from New Madison. All right, that ends our service for today.